Okay, so on your test, okay, there's some multiple choice, there's some short answer. Okay, I don't know exactly how many of each, but with that being said, every question asks you to show your thinking. Please don't just circle something. That doesn't do me any good. I can't give you points on that. Okay. One thing, y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. That's also where x equals 0. So you're looking at when x is 0, what's your y? X-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. That's when y is 0. So where does it cross the y-axis? So main is always the same for every exponential function, unless it is a real world problem. It's the exact same every single time. Your range is going to either be negative infinity, so your asymptote, or it's going to be asymptote to positive infinity. Okay, this is all depending on which way your graph is facing. If it's facing downwards, then it's going to be this one. Oops, okay, it's going to be the other one. Sorry. This one. If it is facing upwards, then it's going to be this one. Okay, so this is up, this is down. All right, some things I think you should know. If I say 3 times f of x, and I say, here's your function, and then here's a transformation, what you're going to do is you're going to take all your y values and multiply them times 3. So take the original and multiply your y values times 3. Okay. So if I said 2 raised to the x is your original function, then 3 times 2 to the x would look like this. And you could type that into your calculator and then graph it, right? Remember, average rate of change, that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I don't give you this formula. This is something you got to know. Okay, average rate of change is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, you need to know your transformations. Okay, so that's going to look like this, where if it's negative, it's a reflection. If A is bigger than 1, it's a stretch. If it's less than 1, it's a shrink. B is just your base or what your ratio is. X minus or plus H, that's going to move either right or left. And then that plus K or minus K is going to be your up and down. Remember, your plus or minus K, that's your asymptote. Are there any questions on that so far? So we got minus A times B X minus or plus H plus or minus K. A shrink is less than 1. A stretch is greater than 1. Okay, so growth factor is going to be 1 plus R. Remember, you always want to change whatever the percent is into a decimal when you're adding that. The rate is just your R value, but remember, you have to put it in decimal form, okay? So if I had something like this, where 3 times 1.25 raised to the x, and I said, what is the growth rate? What would you tell me? I want to know the growth rate. What would you tell me? Well, you would take 1.25 and subtract 1, and you would get 0.25 or 25%. Okay? If I ask for the growth factor, what would you tell me? 1.25, right? 25% would be the rate. 1.25 would be the growth factor. What would be the initial amount on this one? 3, okay? Remember, when we figure out what the equation is, you do your initial, sorry, I'm writing this all over the place, initial times your rate. In order to figure out what your rate is, let's say they give you a table. You're going to take your second number and divide it by the first number. So if we went, here's your table. If I went from 1,000 to 500 to 50, I'm going to take 500 and divide it by 1,000. And that's going to give me 0.5. If I took 250 and divided it by 500, that would give me 0.5. So my rate would be 0.5. Let's say that we had our initial at 1,000. So this equation would be 1,000 times 0.5 raised to the x. If I wanted to find the 10th year that happened, I would just plug in a 10. Everybody understand? Yeah, in place of x. And then you're just going to type it into your calculator. Yeah. You sure? No, because I don't have it pulled up. Right, I don't have it pulled up. Okay. Other thing. Compound interest. If it says monthly, how many times does that happen? Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to plug in all of your information and then type it into Desmos. When you type it in, you need to make sure that you use parentheses here and here. Okay. So let's say that I had an initial of 1,000. Let's say my rate was 3%. And let's say we're doing it for 7 years. Let's think about how we're going to write this out. Well, what's our initial? Our rate, we've got to make sure we turn it into a decimal. So that's going to be 0.03. N is the number of times it's compounded. So 12. And then we have an exponent of 12 times how many years? I would type that into my calculator exactly like that. And whatever number it spits out, that would be the answer. Be careful though, in Desmos, when you do this little multiplication, it drops this 7 down here. So just be mindful, you need to make sure you put parentheses up here. Okay. Further. Okay. If I said, hey, your paycheck could be represented like this would be really weird, but let's go with it. And then I said, on top of that, I'm going to give you $100 for doing such a great job. What would be my new equation? Exactly. Okay. The transformations we already went over. Compound interest we already went over. Use your Desmos graphing calculator, please. Okay, if I said I want this parent function and I want to have a y-intercept of 6. Okay, I want to transform this to have a y-intercept of 6. Well, what is the y-intercept right now? If I plug in 0, what do I get? Okay, 2 to the 0 power is 1. So how do I make that go to 6? So from 1 to 6, how many is that? Oh dear. 6 minus 1 is 5. So our new function is going to be 2 to the x plus 5. Everybody see how I got that? Okay. So let's say I had the original function as this, my y-intercept. I want to be 6. Right now it's at 1. So we're going to add 5 in order to shift it up to have a y-intercept of 6. Okay. Okay, everything else, pretty self-explanatory, or you've seen it on your review. Okay. Go ahead, clear off your desk. All you need is a pencil and your laptop. Okay.